lunatic fringe that defines our coach's legacy when it comes to this game. They don't get to define that outside the family. We're cut from a different cloth for Ohioans. He's got it all, man. He's even got the jaw. You know the jaw. You see that jaw and you're just like, yeah, man, that's a dude. Do I want Michigan to beat Oklahoma? No way in hell. I don't know what world I'm living in. This is insane to me. And if you saw my outburst, I apologize. It's showtime now. Texas at Ohio State, 1 versus 2 or 3, depending on who you trust the most. I fully believe what we are about to see here, in addition to a fantastic game, are 2 excellent college quarterback eras begin at both Ohio State and Texas with Arch Manning and Julian Sayin. The interesting thing is when we talk about these 2 quarterbacks, the public's perception of these 2, despite their very clear similarities, couldn't be more different. I really hope that Julian Sayin is going to make a whole lot of new fans Saturday, and I think he will, because as strange as it sounds, being a 5-star, a kid who won the Elite 11, the number 1 or 2 quarterback coming out of his class, depending on where you looked, Julian Sayin might be the quietest, least hyped future superstar we've ever seen, for sure at Ohio State. And I don't just mean by the national media. I mean by Ohio State fans as well. And I think that's all about to change on Saturday. Julian Sayin is the anti-media Arch Manning. Like, not Arch Manning, but media Arch Manning. Everything Arch has done, like, people just hate on him. And Julian's just the opposite. But that's not the real Arch that everybody's hating on. That's the media Arch. And it's important to differentiate that because the real Arch has pretty much handled these circumstances better than anybody I could imagine being in the situation he's in, coming from the family he comes from the money he comes from, the spotlight. He's not a diva. He hates the spotlight. He loves his teammates. He loves his school. He's been a perfect teammate. He waited his turn. He's been perfect. And it seems really genuine. It doesn't seem contrived. But the media Arch, that's the quarterback that's not deserving of all the press, that's been shoved down the public's throats, that's got people talking about he's the front runner for the Heisman before he's ever started a game. Well, before he's ever started a real game. And Arch in this system, an extra year than Julian's been at Ohio State. He threw for 900 yards last year, most of it garbage time or against trash teams, like his 2 starts against, I think it was UTEP and Mississippi State, 2 teams with horrible defenses. And what did he show in those games? He showed, number 1, some really high-level throws. He definitely showed some deep balls, some lasers, some really nice accuracy on a college football field against college defenses, albeit not very good ones. He showed some dumb picks too, and he showed some mistakes when you rush him. They got some heat on him. He threw a really bad pick. And I think we could see some of that on Saturday. But the scariest thing he showed as far as Saturday's matchup goes to me was the running. The kid's got real wheels, and he's got breakaway speed, and he busted off like a 55-yarder. He even had a little bit of taunting at the end of that run. And you probably heard him talk. Very classy kid. Doesn't seem like the type that would taunt a little at the end of a run, but he's a competitor. And I'm telling you, I like that about him. I think the dude's going to be a really, really good quarterback. How good? I don't know. But it's hard for me in general not to like this guy, not to root for this guy. I do often push back against media narratives, and I admit I can't stand the way it's been shoved down our throat. I'll let Tim Tebow. And Tim Tebow, that took place before social media was big. In this era, with as big as social media is, if Arch comes out on Saturday and has a game where he lights it up, I can't even begin to imagine the circus that's going to be around Arch Manning and Texas this year. And I'm just trying to remember that I can't hate media Arch without letting it cloud my honest evaluation, because the dude has been pretty cool. But it is going to be bigger than Tim Tebow if Arch comes out, wins in Columbus on Saturday, and has a great game. Now, a lot of people think this guy's been overrated since he came out of high school. Wouldn't have been a 5-star if his name wasn't Manning. I don't think it'll be long before those people that even dislike Arch are going to have to admit he's a hell of a football player. But there is already some Arch fatigue setting in. But the other quarterback, the other superstar quarterback that's going to be on the field on Saturday night, most of the country has no clue. They've heard his name. They might have seen a picture, but they've never seen a highlight. They got no idea what Julian Sayin has to offer other than looking at him and not being very impressed. And I think they're in for a real surprise. If Arch is the 5-star, number 1 rated quarterback in the class who's gets oversaturated, Julian Sayin is the exact opposite. He's like the anti-media Arch, and it's pretty wild because you would think Julian Sayin, as a 5-star quarterback in his second year, who's about to start at Ohio State, a brand just like Texas, maybe the 2 biggest in the country, that Julian Sayin would have been consistently pumped up and consistently talked about like Arch has been. Not quite to that level. Obviously, his last name isn't Manning, but Julian Sayin has been consistently under-discussed, overlooked, even from a lot of Ohio State fans. The excitement level, it's just not been there, and it's really obvious why. It's because of the way he looks. It's because of his build. It's because of his perceived limitations and his public personality. He just doesn't sell it like that, and he's similar to Arch, I think, and he doesn't really want to. He probably doesn't even want the pub, but he's going to get it. He's going to get it because people have been underestimating this guy, and I think he's absolutely got the goods. I always have. I've been talking to Buckeye fans for the last year and a half on my show, and the doubt about Julian Sayin has been so high that at one point during the spring last year, I started to briefly doubt myself. Man, am I wrong about this kid? I've been so excited for him. I was pissed off when he committed to Bama. I thought he was going to be another Bryce Young. And when he did come and transfer to Ohio State, I mean, you take one look at him if you've never seen him before. The baby face, it makes him look shorter than he is. And you just look at the guy, he doesn't look like he has a big arm. But there's a lot of Buckeye fans who were so latched on at that time when he transferred into Air Noland. And it didn't matter if they had ever seen Air Noland play football or not. The dude's nickname is Air. Ryan Day went and got him. He must be that dude. And during that season, when Kyle McCord wasn't exactly playing fantastic, there were so many people who were saying, don't worry, Air is coming, as if he was going to come in as a freshman and somehow save the day. I mean, Air is coming could have been trending on Twitter when Kyle McCord wasn't playing good. I heard people say that to no end. And Ryan Day going out and getting Air must be a 5-star, must be awesome. He's built great. Surely he must come in as a freshman and be better than Kyle McCord. And that crew was not happy when Ryan Day took Julian Sayin in. But when he took Julian Sayin in, it was a clear indication of which quarterback he wanted more. I mean, we already knew which quarterback he wanted more because he went after Julian Sayin before he went after Air Noland. But choosing to bring him in after he already had Air committed was the only thing I needed to know what the boss thought about these two guys. You don't bring Sayin in after you told Air he's going to be the only quarterback in the class unless you're prepared to lose Air. And Ryan Day was. Now, that was a bit of a controversial decision by Ryan Day. And that decision has led to what we're about to see on Saturday. If you want to play the what if game, like what if Ryan Day had not made that decision? Who are we seeing roll out at quarterback on Saturday? Is Devin Brown still here? Did he and Lincoln just have a quarterback battle? Is it a transfer? I don't know. But it was a cutthroat decision by Ryan Day and a moment that I personally had a lot of buyback in on Ryan Day. Number one, because I was a huge fan of Julian Sayin coming out of high school. And it's a decision that I did not believe he would have made prior to that situation right there. It was shortly after the Cotton Bowl, the Missouri game. I was furious. I had just decided to start my podcast. I had ordered the equipment, an angry, aspiring podcaster. And by the time the equipment came, I was no longer angry. And a lot of it was the decision to bring Julian Sayin in. My tone was totally different because to me, it marked what I thought was a change in the way Ryan Day was going to do things. I don't want to say win at all cost because it'll always be for him culture first. And I love that about him. But there is a balancing act. And I think he made a decision to push a little harder. But when Julian got on campus last year in the spring, a lot of people still pushing for Air. They didn't understand why Julian was getting more opportunities in the spring. And then when we rolled into this year and Air left, a lot of those folks jumped on to the Lincoln train. I heard him talking about Tavian. I just wonder, can you think of another 5-star quarterback, a number 1 type quarterback that the Ohio State fan base has been less excited about than Julian Sayin? I'll save you the trouble. There hasn't been one. And it's obviously easy to see why. These other guys we're talking about, Air Noland, Tavian St. Clair, Lincoln Keenholz, they're all 6'3" yoked up athletic dudes. Julian's none of that. Doesn't have a very outgoing personality. Doesn't come across as somebody who's going to be a great leader. Take command of the huddle. Julian Sayin, quite possibly the strangest underdog story ever, right? Like, keep in mind, this dude had to win over scouts before he ever had to win over the public. When he's going in and winning the Elite 11 and becoming the number one quarterback in the country out of high school, like, that is incredible. Keep in mind, these guys are making these projections and grading themselves off of the NFL draft. They take it dead serious. I mean, it is serious business, and this is their career. And despite Julian's frame, which does not look like an NFL prospect, his arm is so different, and he won them over so much with that arm that even with that build, they made him number one, which made me really curious. Who is this kid Nick Saban's going after? In a class with Dylan Raiola, he wants that kid. Well, those who were curious went and watched him. And this kid playing high-level California high school football was a wizard. A wizard. And everybody was like, holy moly, that's Bryce Young all over again. The accuracy, the arm slots, the off-platform stuff, the athleticism. He is very athletic. Ryan Day spoke about it yesterday. But I couldn't wait to see if that would translate onto the college football field. Could he pull that off against the big dogs? And that is what I am most excited for on Saturday. I've been waiting for a couple of years now. We're just 3 days out, and we get to see Julian Sayin make his debut in the biggest game that he's going to play all year until the last game of the regular season, and it's against Media Arch. He's got a good offensive line. He's got the best wide receivers in football. He's got the best tight end in football, and he's taking on what many are calling the best defense in football. And he doesn't got a lot of pressure. Arch and Texas have all the pressure. The spotlight is on Manning. The spotlight is on Sark. And it's really strange because when we look at Ohio State, they're the defending national champions. They're playing at home. They're the favorite. You would think the pressure would be on Ohio State. But the outside pressure is on Texas, who's everybody's darling right now, everybody's national championship pick. Everybody's picking them to win the game, despite them not being the favorite. It's all on them. And if Steve Sarkisian, who's been to the semifinals 2 years in a row, doesn't cash in this year, he starts to enter that, can he get over the hump? Can he win the big one territory that we see so many of these coaches go through before they finally win one? And especially if James Franklin cashes it in this year, that transfers over to Sark for sure. But I think we're going to come out of this game, not so great game or not, when it comes to Julian Sayin, saying, I see it. I see it. I think he's going to make some plays that are going to be like, okay, there it is. We can win with this guy. And it's going to put a whole lot of people's minds at ease, because I know there are a lot of people who are very on the fence about whether or not Ohio State can win a championship with this guy. I totally believe they can. I definitely do. So Ryan Day, obviously he got crushed before last year. The expectations for Ryan Day last year from the media were a little over the top. It was like, yeah, the team was in natty or bust mode, but there really was that expectation from the media that if Ryan Day didn't win a national championship, they were just going to crush him. You know, they were. It was natty or bust for Ryan Day was their angle. And if he didn't, they were going to totally crush him. I don't think there's any other program outside of Ohio State that gets that kind of expectation from the media other than Ohio State and Texas when they're up. And I do just want to, before I talk about the press conference tomorrow, is hit on this. Adam says, sick of hearing Sayin and Caleb being labeled as the Bama transfers every time they're mentioned by the national media. Now, this is an interesting conversation to me because they have now both been at Ohio State longer. Like Julian was at Ohio State longer than he was at Alabama, a month after he was at Ohio State. Caleb has obviously now been at Ohio State longer than he was ever at Alabama. And I was thinking this morning, I think it was because I watched the replay of the Indiana. Remember Caleb's Indiana punt return. So Caleb returns the punt for a touchdown. And in the middle of his call, Gus Johnson, in the middle of his call, as he's the Alabama transfer. Like, what? So that bothers me, right? It bothers me, and it bothered me last year. Are they going to continue that? Like, when does the statute of limitations wear off that we have to describe someone as a transfer? Because I think that when they've been at the new school longer than they were ever at the old school, we can just now call them the Buckeye, the Buckeye. Let's not call them the Alabama transfer anymore. Adam, we'll have our ears out for that this year. We'll be talking about that and cooking some people if they keep that up. But went down to Ryan Day's press conference yesterday at the Woody, and he was asked about Julian's athleticism. And not a lot of people seem to have given Julian much credit for his athleticism, but he's shown it in a few times in limited snaps at Ohio State. I think he had 11 passes last year, but he has shown it. He had one 20-yard scramble down the gut, and it looked like, man, that dude's got some wheels. He can make this happen when he needs to. But this is what Ryan Day said about his athleticism. He's got good short area quickness. He can move in the pocket. He's gotten stronger, put on weight, strength, and power. In terms of somebody similar, CJ Stroud's mobility. He's quick. So he compared Julian's mobility to CJ Stroud, which nobody thought CJ Stroud had a lot of mobility for quite a while either. Maybe not until his last game, or at least didn't know he had quite that until that Georgia game, man. That was something. But part of the fun of having an outlet for myself talking about Buckeyes football is being able to put myself on record. And boy, if Julian Sayin comes out and shows out, have I got a segment to show you from like week 3 of my show about what I said about Julian Sayin? I can't wait. I cannot wait. But yeah, man, a lot of Bryce Young comparisons. And the funny thing is, Bryce Young was his idol. Like, they lived close to each other. He was his favorite quarterback. Julian Sayin used to watch clips in middle school of Bryce Young at the Elite 11. Julian goes on to win the Elite 11. It's just a really cool similarity. Now, Bryce has a negative connotation now because of Carolina. I don't know. Maybe he's turned that around, but it didn't start out well. And certainly one of the things that you noticed when Bryce Young got to Carolina was, oh my gosh, this dude looks so small in the NFL. I can't wait to see Julian out there and see what he looks like on this field with these two behemoth teams. But he's got a hell of an offensive line, and we're going to talk about those lines. I think Julian's going to smash it tomorrow. I'm going to say, so the over-under for passing yards for Julian Sayin tomorrow is Saturday, 231.5 yards. That's the over-under in passing yards. What do you got? 231.5 yards. I got the over. I did a survey before the show. 350 votes. 68% said over. I think Julian Sayin is going to be a yards machine type of quarterback. Accuracy, yards, pick him up easy in chunks. Last year, if we look at Will Howard, in 16 games, he had 4,000 yards, 73% accuracy, 35 touchdowns, 10 picks. If we go back to 2023, Kyle McCord in 13 games, was it 13? Was it 12? 12 games, 3,170 yards, 66%, 24 touchdowns, 6 picks. I think Julian's going to shred Kyle's numbers. In 2022, CJ Stroud, 14 games, 3,688, 66% accuracy, 41 touchdowns, and 6 picks. 41 is crazy. But Julian, I'm thinking, not going to be a CJ Stroud 4,400 yards because you got a better running game and you got a better schedule. But I could see it being somewhere in between the Kyle McCord season and that season. And again, we don't know how many games we're going to play. These things, I wish you can't, it's hard to find. You have to do the math yourself, but it's hard to find like just the regular season stats so we can compare even. But obviously CJ Stroud in his first big time game against a big time opponent, Oregon, comes into the shoe. I think he passed for 484 yards that game. Could we see something like that out of Julian? How fun would that be? But I'm thinking we're looking at somewhere around 3,500 yards, 35-ish touchdowns, and 5 picks. Not quite enough to get him to New York for the Heisman, which I think is perfect because it's plenty enough to get Jeremiah Smith to New York for the Heisman ceremony. And I think that Jeremiah will be in New York for the Heisman ceremony. But not going to be long before everybody said they knew all along that Julian Sayin was going to be just as good as Arch.